foot of the stairs. The maid screamed and clutched at her mistress, gagging on the thick air. "We must try," Hannah cried, and gathered up the skirt of her shift. With one sleeve over her face to filter the air, she forced her way against the punishing heat, down into the hell below. "Hannah!" Her father plunged after her. Already she was lost in the blinding smoke, but an instant later he heard a scream. A lurching body crashed into him, fire leaping up the side of her shift. They fell hard against the wooden steps, and his hands flew without thinking, beating out the flames. Hannah wept with pain as he dragged her bodily upward again into the illusory safety of the chamber above. "The window," his manservant said, while Hannah's legs collapsed beneath her. "We must try to climb out." On an ordinary night, Farinor would have called it lunacy. But when the only alternative was death... "We cannot climb down, though." His man was already unlatching the window. "Then we go across, onto the roof. If you go first, I will help your daughter." Expansions years ago had jettied the upper floor outward, so that it overhung the street. Farinor gasped in the fresher air, then forced his aging body through the narrow opening, clawing for the eaves above. His grip slipped, almost sending him to the street below, but his manservant caught his foot and gave him the push needed to lift him safely over the edge. Hannah was next, biting through her lip when the manservant gripped her blistered legs. "Help!" she cried as soon as she had her voice again. "Fire! Wake! Rouse yourselves! Fire in Pudding Lane!" Movement flickered in other windows. Theirs was not the only house whose upper stories overreached the boundary of its plot. She could almost touch the windows across the way, where faces pressed briefly against the glass, then vanished. Pain and smoke set her to coughing, but by then Farinor had the cry. So Hannah was the one to see their manservant haul himself up over the edge of the roof. But where was the maid? "She will not come," he said, eyes wild and bleak. "She fears the height too much. I tried." Hannah bent and shouted toward the open window, but there was no reply. They could not stay. Moving carefully, the three eased their way along the edge of the roof to the neighbors' shutters. Farinor kicked against these, bellowing. Figures had begun to appear in the street below, most in their nightshirts, some with breeches and boots on. They knew what would be needed. The shutters opened abruptly, scraping Farinor's bare leg. Reaching hands eased his daughter through into safety, then the baker, then his man. Heat radiated from the wall between the dwellings, but as yet there was no fire, and the house's leather buckets had been brought already to soak the beams and the plaster in between. In Pudding Lane, the parishioners of St. Margaret's Fish Street rose to their duty, arranging bucket lines, flinging soil and dung, pails of milk, anything that came to hand. On this, the Lord's Day of Rest, they settled themselves for battle, to save themselves and their homes from fire. Part 1. Trust in Princes, 1639 to 1642. Consider seriously whether the beginning of the happiness of a people should be written in letters of blood. Thomas Wentworth, 1st Earl of Strafford, May 12, 1641. The Royal Exchange, London, 3 June 1639. The beating heart of London's commerce sweltered like an oven in the early heat, dampening undershirts and linen collars, and subduing the voices that echoed off the walls. In the open stone of the courtyard, the sun hammered down on the hats and caps of the finely dressed merchants and customers who met to conduct business or exchange news. Some took refuge in the gallery ringing the space, where shade offered a relative degree of relief. Upstairs, in the tiny enclosed shops, the air was stiflingly close. Sir Anthony Ware fanned uselessly at his dripping face with a sheaf of papers. A petition foisted on him by a man outside. He might read it later, but for now it served a better purpose.